10 minutes on the ground in the village.
Many of the statues ISIS toppled were fakes.
$500 for 2 children. Just sold off like that.
This can't really be happening.
This shot tells a story.
Stand by in 3, 2, 1.
And what does that indicate? What's a typical day like? Will there be any sanctions? Robin.
Hi, Robin. Robin, it was a surreal period.
I'm Farai Sevenzo in Nairobi. This is CNN.
This is CNN Breaking News.
Hello and welcome to Connect the World. I'm Lynda Kinkade in Atlanta. We begin with breaking news. Hurricane Dorian is now beginning to make landfall in the Bahamas as a very powerful Category 5 storm, the highest level, and it's getting stronger. Dorian is one of the most powerful hurricanes to hit the islands in years, the strongest storm anywhere on the planet in 2019. Well, the Bahamas are already feeling the wind and the rain from Dorian, and it's only going to get worse as the hurricane stalls over the islands for most, if not all, of Sunday. But where it goes to from there remains uncertain. The latest forecasts expect the hurricane to charge towards Florida and ride along the coast of the southeastern United States over the coming days. Well, CNN is on the ground ready for wherever this storm hits next. Patrick Ottman is in Freeport on Grand Bahama Island. Good to have you with us, Patrick. This, of course, is the strongest hurricane on the planet this year. As I mentioned, Category 5. How are things looking there?
Only the second Category 5 in recorded history to hit the Bahamas. And what really is special, or in this case scary, about the Bahamas is so many of the islands are low-lying. You don't have the mountains or the hills here that you have in other parts of the Caribbean, which can help slow down and take away the power from a major hurricane like this. And because we are in such a low-lying area, when a hurricane comes and it brings 15 or 20 feet of storm surge, that just absolutely envelops, submerges an island. And many of these islands, there's 700 islands in the Bahamas, are low-lying islands where people live. So the government in the last few days has evacuated people to higher islands, and I say higher with an asterisk because where I am, Grand Bahama, is considered an island that's higher than other islands in the area, but the highest point of land here is only 30 feet high. So again, a 15-foot storm surge or higher, and still much of this island is going to be underwater. The fact that this storm is progressing and we're getting some of the first bands now of that wind picking up, it's going to get so much worse than this, though. But, you know, for the people who live on the coastal parts of these islands, it would just be suicide to stay where they are. That's why the government has been imploring people to leave the coast, to leave houses that cannot withstand this kind of wind, because in the coming hours and throughout all day tomorrow, it is just going to be unimaginable. We keep using that word catastrophic, and what we're talking about is like a bomb going off. I've seen these storms before. This will be my third Category 5 storm. They are incredibly unpleasant and scary things to survive, to live through. And when you go out after it's passed, it looks like a bomb has gone off. That is what we're expecting here in the Bahamas, Lynda.
Like a bomb has gone off. That is absolutely terrifying. We spoke earlier, Patrick, and you told me you're in an apartment with people who do not want to leave, that are helping to host you there. Just explain, is there an apartment built to withstand a Category 5 storm? What are the building regulations there like?
So they say they went through Hurricane Matthew here just 3 years ago, which was a Category 4 storm, and they never lost a window, that they have hurricane shutters up, that they have windows that they say can withstand 200 miles an hour. They've been told it is a very solid building. We have a stairwell. I expect I'll be sleeping tonight with my crew of Jose Armijo and Jade Garcia, and we're ready for this as we can be. Most people in the Bahamas are not lucky, as lucky to be in a new, well-built building like we are in. Many people live here in conditions that are not much better than shacks or houses that have roofs that will fly away. So that's why they've been encouraged to go to hospitals, to go to shelters that are basically concrete bunkers and hopefully can withstand this. But anybody who says that they have hurricane-proof windows, that they have a hurricane-proof housing, that there's no such thing. They've built newer structures to withstand these winds. I don't know if there's a structure that can withstand 24 hours of Category 5 winds. I just frankly doubt that. The danger here is not just the strength of the storm, but the fact that it is moving so slowly. It may even slow down. Our weather department says the average will be 3 miles an hour progressing as it goes through the Bahamas. You know, it's basically walking through the Bahamas, but laying waste wherever it goes. And when you have a storm that just stalls out over you, it's happened to me before. I was in Hurricane Wilma in Mexico. We had a Category 4 storm that stalled out over us, and it's about the worst thing you can imagine if you're covering this thing. To be on a low-lying island is just another element of danger. So we are here in the field. We know we are in danger. We're taking that very, very seriously. At some point, we'll probably have to go inside, tonight, tomorrow, and we are prepared to do that because we're not going to risk our lives any more than we have to. But right now, it's a ways away from us. We'll be feeling the effects throughout the day, and hope to continue to report on the storm until the point we can't, and that's just part of this job. But certainly, in terms of worst case scenarios, this seems like as bad as you can imagine.
Yeah, the fact that it's going to hover over there as a Category 5 for about 24 hours is absolutely pretty scary. Do you know how many people have managed to get out, Patrick?
Managing to get out, it's very, very few. You'd have to fly out, and there are 50-seater airplanes that come in and out of here. Many people that I talked to were afraid, ironically enough, to go to Florida, where many Bahamians have relatives, because they felt the storm might go there. So, as so often happens, people would evacuate. A lot of people simply can't afford to leave and go get a hotel. So most people said they were going to hunker down. The good thing, though, is the government said they felt more people in this area were taking the storm seriously than in the past and were seeking shelter.
All right, Patrick Ottman, you take care there, you and your team. And those you're staying with, we're going to check in with you a little bit later. Thanks so much, Patrick. Well, I want to get some more information on exactly how this hurricane is tracking and bringing meteorologist Alison Chincha. Alison, just explain how this continues to change direction. This is now a Category 5, pretty scary for those in its path.
Especially when you look at the winds, Linda. I mean, because there's really nothing around it to weaken this storm, which is why we've seen it increase so rapidly across this open water. The problem is now it's actually headed to land and will have devastating impacts not only on the Bahamas, but potentially even the United States as well. The current winds for this latest update are 285 kilometers per hour, but the gusts are in excess of 350 kilometers per hour. And you have to be concerned about the gusty winds just as well as the sustained winds. Now, it's still moving due west. It has slowed ever so slightly, now about 11 kilometers per hour. But you look at the scope. The eye wall has expanded. The storm as a whole has gotten larger, and it's still intensifying. Pressure has continued to drop over these last few hours as they're taking the measurements from the hurricane hunters that are out in the storm. The track still maintains a Category 5 storm all the way through the Bahamas. They are hoping that it begins to weaken a little bit on its approach to Florida. The question is, when does it make this sharp turn to the north? We know it will at some point, but does it do it before it makes landfall in Florida, or does it cross into Florida before you start to see that turn? Florida is not the only state at risk here. Georgia, South Carolina, as well as North Carolina are all in that cone of uncertainty to have potential impacts. We also saw at the top of the hour additional watches and warnings put out. We have hurricane warnings for portions of the Bahamas, and we also have tropical storm warnings as well as hurricane watches in effect for areas of Florida. And the tropical storm watches have since pushed a little bit farther inland as well, because we just don't know exactly when this storm will start to make that transition north. In terms of storm surge, this is going to be one of the biggest concerns for the Bahamas. You're talking about 18 to 23 feet, which is about 5 to 7 meters. But rainfall is also going to be a massive concern in these areas. You're talking about 10 to 20 feet potentially across these islands. Again, that ranges from 250 to in excess of 500 millimeters of rain, because as the storm crosses over the Bahamas, it is going to slow down. That allows it to have more time to dump a tremendous amount of rain, Lynda. So there's a lot of factors at play here. Obviously, the wind is going to be a huge issue because of damage to buildings, power outages, but the rain and the storm surge are also going to be massive factors for this as well.
Absolutely. All right, good to have you giving us that update. Alison Chinsha, thank you so much. We will come back to you again soon. Thank you. Well, I want to go to that terrifying gun rampage in Texas now over this busy Labor Day weekend. Authorities are trying to work out why a man began shooting at troopers who had stopped him in his car before he drove off to continue firing at people seemingly at random. Now, 7 people were killed, about 20 wounded, including a 17-month-old baby. She's now in a stable condition. At one point, the gunman hijacked a postal truck, using it to make his way into the city of Odessa. He was eventually killed in a shootout with police. Well, for more on this story, I want to bring in Ed Lavandera. He is in Odessa. Ed, the death toll has risen to 7 now. Several people still in a critical condition. Just explain how this all unfolded.
Well, this started on Saturday afternoon, and Odessa police say, as many municipalities across the country have trained for what has become all too common here in the United States, these mass shooting scenarios. But officers tell us they usually train for these scenarios in one specified location. So because this occurred and unfolded over multiple parts of the city, that was a new dynamic that many of these officers had not really trained for. It was a new episode in all of this, as calls of people being wounded by gunfire was coming into the Odessa Police Department here from all parts of the city. And we've seen that, little small pockets of a number of crime scenes where bullet fragments and bullets have been discovered, and each of those crime scenes being guarded and waiting for investigators to come through those areas. So it's a very different dynamic from previous mass shootings that we have seen. But all of this started with a traffic stop in between Midland and Odessa. They're about 15 kilometers apart, and that is where the gunman started firing at first at 2 state police officers, and then started driving around the city of Odessa randomly, shooting at targets and at people in very busy parts of the city as well, and also commandeering a U.S. postal truck and continuing to fire from that as well. It was an incredibly eerie and frantic several hours. Authorities here were urging people to get off the streets, to essentially go into hiding until they could track down this gunman. And eventually it all ended behind a popular movie theater on the northeast edge of town, where police arrived and engaged gunfire with the suspect, and that's where they shot and killed him.
So, Ed, of course, hours after this massacre, the state relaxed gun laws. These obviously were discussed for some time, and they were due to come into effect. That is despite the massacre last month in El Paso, and now this one. Take us through those changes.
Well, there are a number of changes that, there has been a concealed carry handgun here in the state of Texas for some time, since the mid-1990s. And since then, gun laws. This, Texas is a place where gun laws are extremely lax, especially when compared to the rest of the United States. And it is these particular laws that allow you to take guns into various places where they've been previously prohibited. Those types of change. These are all laws that were passed during the last legislative session at the beginning, which ended in May, and will now. It's customary that these laws kind of take place several months after these legislative session ends, and that just so happens that is due for today. But all of this, comes for an increased scrutiny for the governor of Texas, who has long championed these types of easing restrictions on where you can carry handguns and what you can do with firearms here in the state of Texas. But it remains, a very intense debate here where it has a great deal of legislative support. You do find pockets in certain parts of the state where there are calls for much more gun control, but there is just as strong voices here, especially out here in West Texas, where these kinds of laws tend to be very popular.
They certainly do. Ed Lavandera, good to have you with us on this story, the latest massacre in the United States. We will stay on this story. For now, I want to return to our top story, Hurricane Dorian. Its dangerous winds and rains are starting to bear down on the Bahamas. I want to bring in Captain Stephen Russell. He's the director of the National Emergency Agency in the Bahamas. He's in charge of the government's response and the recovery. We were trying to get through to him earlier. We've got him on the phone now. Good to have you with us. This is a Category 5 storm, the worst possible category, bearing down on the Bahamas. How prepared are you there?
Well, we've been advising our population, and particularly northwestern the Bahamas, for the past 5 days to be prepared. We were getting predictions that we can be faced with a Category 4 or 5 storm in the area. So 5 days out, we have been encouraging persons to prepare for such a storm. Over the past 2 days, we've been trying to evacuate persons from some of our low-lying areas, particularly the Keys and the Abaco chain, as well as in Grand Bahama Island, West End and Eastern Grand Bahama. We've been asking persons to move from those low-lying areas into the interior. We are aware that it is a dangerous storm with winds of 180 miles per hour, and we can anticipate sea surge or swells up to almost 20 feet. Those are dangerous and can be destructive. That's what we've been advising our people of what may be coming their way.
Captain Stephen Russell, I understand you've just come out of a meeting with the Prime Minister there. What sort of fears does he have? Does he feel he has enough resources for people there that are going to have to pretty much hunker down for the next 24 hours as this hurricane passes over?
In terms of the resources, New Providence, the island of New Providence, we are basically clear to a certain extent. Just two of our main islands, Grand Bahama and Abaco. So once the all clear is given, all the other national resources are going to come to bear to support those communities that would have been impacted. As we speak, I have a number of our international partners who are in my office, from SEDINA, World Food Program, USAID. They are in our office in Nassau. We're strategizing as to how we can quickly get resources into those impacted communities as soon as we get the all clear from our Department of Meteorology, hopefully by Wednesday morning, Wednesday afternoon, the latest.
This, of course, is not new for the Bahamas, Captain Stephen Russell. You had 3 consecutive years where you were battered by hurricanes. What have you learnt from those years?
Well, yes, there have been good teaching moments. So we have adopted a concept to encourage our persons to be resilient. They know what they've gone through over the past 4 years, and we encourage them to whatever they can do to improve their condition for this particular storm or hurricane, or what may ever come for the remainder of the hurricane season. Let's be resilient, but our main focus is to save lives, minimize injuries, and to try and minimize losses and damages as best we can. But we know it's a challenge based on how strong and destructive this storm can be. It's a challenge trying to safeguard assets and resources.
It certainly is. Captain Stephen Russell, the director of the National Emergency Agency in the Bahamas. Good to have you with us as that Category 5 hurricane barrels through the Bahamas. We're going to stay across this story and bring you more when we come back. Stay with us. You're watching Connect the World.
Stateless, persecuted. Rohingya Muslims who fled Myanmar now face a new threat. Women and children falling prey to traffickers. CNN travels to the world's largest refugee camp to understand the crisis.
Nobody was really able to do anything to help.
What does it take to lead a search for a missing child?
In 24 hours.
Yeah,
we're going to come back here with the police if she's not providing us with the address of the man who took the boy.
Stolen Son, a CNN Freedom Project documentary. Tonight.
Vi que tenían a mi amigo amarrado de sus manos y de sus pies y con una venda en su cara. Es que ahora lo vas a matar, me dijo.
Ya me dijo que ya no me iban a dejar salir. Me llevaron y pues me empezaron a vender con hombres.
You've heard it in the news. It's happening right now. Thousands are fleeing gang violence in and around Central America. Millions more are leaving Venezuela to escape violence, insecurity, and threats. These refugee children desperately need your help today. With your gift to USA for UNHCR, you can help provide urgently needed food, clean water, and safety to children and families who are fleeing for their lives. Go to forcetoflee.org and donate just $19 a month right now. Help bring peace and safety to these innocent children today. Go online with your $19 monthly support now.
When news happens anywhere in the world, CNN is there. In Iran,
This country continues to chafe under the weight of U.S. sanctions.
Absolutely overwhelming.
in Greenland,
The government of Greenland has come out and said, quote, Greenland is not for sale.
in Denmark,
What we got from the Prime Minister was the hope that the dialogue would continue.
in Hong Kong,
From the look of it, these protests are not about to end.
All new Inside Africa. Unlocking the mysteries behind the continent you thought you knew. An eclectic wine farm prides itself on sustainability and diversity.
We are custodians of a piece of land. We're here to leave it in a better space than when we found it.
Inside Africa, tonight only on CNN in association with Zenith Bank.
Welcome back. New tensions between Israel and its neighbors. The Lebanese army says an Israeli drone has breached Lebanon's airspace and started a fire at a farm, while Israel says anti-tank missiles have been fired from the border from Lebanon. We are on the ground in both locations for you. Ben Wiedemann joins us from southern Lebanon. Sam Kiley is in the north of Israel. I'll start first with you, Sam. The Lebanese military managed to make a number of direct hits at an Israeli army base. Israel fired back. What is Israel saying?
Well, it wasn't the Lebanese army, Linda. I think it was Hezbollah. Very important distinction there. Hezbollah had been threatening to retaliate for what they said was the attack they received from Israeli drones about a week ago inside Beirut. But according to the Israeli Defense Forces, they have confirmed that about 2 hours ago, an anti-tank missile or missiles were fired across the border, just about 3 or 4 kilometers from where I'm standing. If you look over just behind me there, the green area is Israel, the brown area effectively is Lebanon. You can see how tight that border is. But they say we don't yet have any information on casualties. There are claims being made from Hezbollah, but they'd hardly be in a position to know. What we do know is that the Israelis were very quick to retaliate. We suspect using artillery, which has been very discreetly tucked into hillsides all along this border for just such an occasion following the Hezbollah threats, and that the area, civilians in the area have been told in a 4 mile or 4 kilometers back from the border to open their bomb shelters, not to panic and not to go into the bomb shelters yet, to stand by if there's any kind of red alert. There are concerns, of course, among the Israelis that this is the first of what may be more attacks coming from Hezbollah. There's also a hope that perhaps now that Hezbollah has struck back and taken its revenge, the tensions between the militant group in southern Lebanon and the Israelis can be dialed down, because there is, of course, in the background, people reflecting on both sides of the border on the disastrous, for both sides, war of 2006, which followed a similar incident as the one that occurred here about 2 hours ago. Lynda?
Thanks, Sam. And a good distinction you made there, Ben. I want to go to you because the Lebanese Prime Minister is calling on the French President and the US Secretary of State to intervene. How is this playing out in Lebanon, and what sort of international response can we expect?
Well, first, let me just give you a feeling, Lynda, for where I am. We're in Maruna Ras, which is right overlooking the border with Israel. And according to the Lebanese army, I'm just going to step out of the way so you get a better shot of this. 40 rounds were fired by Israel into this area below me, these fields right next to what's known as the blue line, the border between Israel and Lebanon. So 40 rounds landing in this field below me, setting fire to the fields. And we're told by people in this town that the actual strike on the Israeli armored vehicle, which Hezbollah has acknowledged it did, occurred also in the background here just a few hours ago, I think at 4:15 local time, which is about 2 hours and 10 minutes ago. And this was something that was not altogether a surprise, because Hezbollah has made it clear through its Secretary General Hassan Nasrallah that Lebanon would respond to the drone strikes, not just the drone incidents in southern Beirut that happened very early in the morning on Sunday, but also to an Israeli strike on a facility outside of Damascus, which Hezbollah says resulted in the killing of 2 of its fighters there. In fact, the operation, the attack on the Israeli vehicle, is being claimed in the name of a group that has been named after those 2 Hezbollah fighters. Now, as far as the chances of some sort of diplomatic solution at this point, it's not altogether clear. We know that Rafiq al-Hariri, the Lebanese Prime Minister, has been in touch with the Americans and the French, but certainly given that Hezbollah is a close ally of Iran, it's questionable whether the Americans will be willing to intervene to try to bring about some sort of calming of the situation. As far as the atmosphere here in southern Lebanon, we did see people filling up at gas stations. Others were in stores getting supplies. But in general, I think if we can pan over again, lots of people have come here to take pictures and send messages to relatives. One man telling me that, pointing to the fires behind me, that this is the price that Israel pays for what he called aggression on Lebanon. Lynda?
Right. Well, Ben, just give us some more context here. Talk to us about the fears that this could become a wider round of fighting here.
Well, you know, in Lebanon, Beirut, everyone is always predicting a war is about to break out. And certainly this is the closest we've come since 2006, when a 33-day war resulted in more than 1,000 Lebanese civilians being killed and large parts of the infrastructure of the country being destroyed. The airport was knocked out of commission, and the worry is that this could be the beginning of a repeat of that. But it's important to keep in mind that unlike 2006, when the relationship between Hezbollah and the Lebanese government wasn't very good, at the moment Hezbollah is very much involved in the daily politics of Lebanon. It has a very good relationship with the Lebanese president and his political party, and what we've seen certainly in the last week is Lebanese politicians coming out to voice their support for Hezbollah, because the Israeli drone operation, if we can call it that, on southern Beirut that happened a week ago came out of the blue. It was not something that as was the result of any particular action by Hezbollah from Lebanon. Lynda?
All right, Ben Wiedemann in southern Lebanon and Sam Kali in the north of Israel. Good to have you both with us. Thank you so much. Well, meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he wants to apply Israeli sovereignty to all Jewish settlements in the West Bank. He's not giving a time frame. Mr. Netanyahu is speaking at one of those settlements, marking the beginning of the school year. The vow comes ahead of elections this month and repeats a promise from the last vote back in April. Palestinian official Saeb Erekat has called for countries around the world to condemn Mr. Netanyahu's statement. Well, still to come, the northern Bahamas are in the path of an extremely powerful and dangerous hurricane. We will be live on the islands where Hurricane Dorian is making landfall after this short break. Stay with us. Well, after the Bahamas, Dorian is set to bring chaos to the eastern coast of the United States. Live reports also from Florida, South Carolina ahead.
We rent this cabin every year.
Yeah, it's perfect for us. Affordable, convenient, just what we need.
Like our wireless service, Consumer Cellular. We get everything we need at a really great price.
Consumer Cellular offers talk, text, and data for as low as $20 a month. And they've received the J.D. Power Award for highest customer service 7 times in a row.
Switching was easy. We even kept our phones and numbers.
And more of our money.
Switch today and get your first month of service free. Call, go online, or find us at Target.
It's like a storm that cuts a path. It breaks your will. It feels like that. You think you're lost, but you're not lost.
As this magnificent species edges closer to extinction, illegal hunting continues to rise. Are you ready to let her go? For a gift of $8 a month, you can symbolically adopt a snow leopard and help protect them and other endangered species and their habitats. Call now or go online to helpwwf.org and receive this adoption kit as thanks. Will you stand by her? Please, help us stop the killing today.
On the next Africa Looks East, I'm in South Africa.
And I'm in Japan to show you why business leaders here are investing in Africa.
From driving new opportunities forward,
the transfer of skills from Japanese to Kenya, the importance of that is immense.
to digging into the future and connecting the continent to the world. These are the ways Japan is partnering with Africa.
Africa Looks East, Tuesday on CNN.
Today, we live in an unpredictable environment, and news races around the world at breakneck speed.
I didn't know what his intention was. I knew it could be obstruction of justice.
My show brings you the latest news and top news makers.
Are you playing with fire?
And we also dive below the headlines to explore vital issues impacting our lives.
It's about right and wrong.
You have to stand up for what you believe in.
We need to realize that our future is at risk and we need to take action.
Was that kind of mortifying or did you enjoy it? I mean, you were great.
It's crucial we make sense of what's happening.
Do you regret that? Do you think there should be nuclear power or more commitment to a clean environment?
New Zealand had its experience and changed its laws. To be honest with you, I do not understand the United States.
Does love have a chance of winning?
I've always believed that.
And fully understand what's at stake.
Amanpour, weekdays on CNN.
I'm Fred Pleitgen in eastern Greenland, and this is CNN.
Welcome back. More on our top story. Dorian, already the most powerful classification of a hurricane, and it's getting stronger. Officials in the U.S. say the hurricane is sustaining maximum winds that top 280 kilometers per hour, with gusts that are even stronger. That makes it the strongest storm anywhere on the planet this year. Well, the Bahamas are feeling the brunt of the hurricane today. Dorian is expected to unleash its full force Sunday as it churns over those islands. The hurricane is already pounding the Bahamas with deadly tidal surges and a torrential amount of rain. Well, making matters even worse, Dorian, is a slow-moving storm, meaning the dangerous conditions are likely to pile up before the storm moves on. Well, let's bring in Theo Sealer. He is a journalist for Eyewitness News in the Bahamas. Theo, good to have you with us. Just give us a sense of the feeling there right now as this hurricane approaches.
Good morning. It's good to be able to bring you the perspective as to what's happening here on the ground in central Abaco and to give the world a look into exactly how this Category 5 storm is giving a pounding to this small island. Now, at about 11 o'clock this morning, the wind started to really pick up, and you could hear the shutters on the front of our bunker starting to rattle. We peeked over the balcony, which I'm going to show you in just a few seconds, and we could see actually shingles from the rooftops lifting off, tree branches being snapped in half. We're actually on an oceanfront property here at the Abaco Beach Marina Resort, and we can see that the tidal surge, as we've said, is coming inland. Forecasters telling us that we're expecting 10 to 20 inches of rain. So when you couple those 10 to 20 inches of rain with the storm surge that's expected on this island, many areas, especially low-lying areas, are going to be experiencing floodwaters. A lot of persons asked to evacuate. Some heeded those calls and some didn't. A number of video footage coming into our Eyewitness chat group showing many communities on this island already inundated with water. And the problem with that is this is just the front end of the storm. The eye hasn't passed, and when the tail crosses over Abaco, north, central, and south, it's going to put quite a beating on this island.
It certainly will, and as you say, it is just the front end of the storm. Theo Sealer, we have to leave it there right now, but we will speak to you again hopefully soon. I want to go to the White House right now where President Trump is speaking. Let's listen in.
That, as you know, they're pouring money into their economy. So those two things, they are paying for their tariffs. As you know, some new tariffs get on. We're taking in tens of billions of dollars. We're giving some of the money to the farmers. I'm making the farmers more than whole. The farmers are doing better than if China, frankly, were buying. I'm taking a piece of the massive amount of tariffs. We're giving them to the farmers who have been targeted unfairly by China. We are talking to China. The meeting is still on, as you know, in September. That hasn't changed. They haven't changed it. We haven't. We'll see what happens. But we can't allow China to rip us off anymore as a country. We can't allow China to take $500 billion a year out of our country. We can't do that. Yeah. I do have a great message for Poland, and we have Mike Pence, our vice president, is just about landing right now. And he is representing me. I look forward to being there soon. But I just want to congratulate Poland. It's a great country with great people. We also have many Polish people in our country. It could be 8 million. We love our Polish friends, and I will be there soon. Say it, say it. Speak up. Well, I think Congress has got a lot of thinking to do, frankly, and they have a lot of, they've been doing a lot of work. I will tell you on behalf of Republicans and Democrats, they've been doing a lot of work and having to do with guns. And I think you're going to see some interesting things coming along. On the hurricane, Admiral, would you like to say something as to the size and scope of the hurricane?
Certainly, Mr. President. Thank you. This hurricane is very strong, Category 5, which talks about the wind. It will also have substantial, destructive, life-threatening storm surge, freshwater rainfall, and 4 states, Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, can all expect to see tropical storm to hurricane-force impacts over the coming days. So the time for preparation is now.
And I'll be going with the Admiral and many others over to FEMA in about an hour. And we'll be having somewhat of a news conference over there where you won't have the engines blurring, but we'll have a news conference over at FEMA. So we'll see you, most of you there, okay? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
U.S. President Trump there speaking moments ago outside the White House, speaking about the tariffs. He spoke obviously about the hurricane approaching the U.S. and very briefly about the latest massacre in Texas. I want to bring in White House reporter Sarah Westwood, who joins us from Washington. Sarah, we missed the start of what President Trump was saying there outside the White House. Just take us through his comments.
That's right, Linda. We were out there with him when he was making those comments. President Trump started off talking about the hurricane, talking about how he's been told that it could be one of the biggest ever. Also talking about that mass shooting in Odessa, Texas, the second mass shooting in Texas in the span of a month. President Trump saying that he has been speaking with members of Congress, speaking with both Republicans and Democrats about something that his administration can do on background checks, like in background checks or any other policies to address mass shootings, like in the past when President Trump has addressed this issue. He's not gone into specifics. He refused to get into specifics today, but said background checks are still on the table, as are a number of other issues, again referring to this as a mental health issue. On the hurricane, President Trump acknowledging that soon he will be going to FEMA, the federal government's emergency response agency, later today to receive a briefing on hurricane preparations. Trump also there talking a little bit about the China trade war, saying that he's working to address the pain, the economic pain that farmers are feeling as a result of his trade war. But Linda, President Trump showing no signs of letting up on that trade war, those tough trade negotiations, saying even though the meeting is proceeding, he's not willing to back off because, in his words, China is continuing to rip off the U.S., Linda.
Yeah, he also added that farmers are doing better than if China were buying their products, which is not what we're hearing when we speak to farmers. But I want to stay on the two biggest stories we're talking about today, which is the hurricane and the mass shooting in Texas here in the U.S. And looking at the president's Twitter account today, so much of our news we have to follow and find out what he thinks about certain issues. Those two barely rate a mention compared to other things that he has been tweeting about.
That's right, Linda. He's been all over the map today on his Twitter. He took a shot at the Hollywood actress Deborah Messing, who has gotten criticism from conservative circles for demanding the identities of those who will be attending a reported fundraiser President Trump is reportedly having in Beverly Hills later this month. That is something that conservatives have criticized. President Trump seizing on that earlier today by suggesting that Deborah Messing has changed because she was once polite to him when he was in show business. Trump also taking shots at former FBI Director James Comey, who was chastised by the Department of Justice's internal watchdog last week for his handling of sensitive memos back when he was the FBI director in the aftermath of his removal. So President Trump also focusing on those topics, Linda, as well as a lot of retweets of the emergency response mechanisms of the government as he is focusing on the hurricane. That was, of course, his stated reason for not going to Poland this weekend, was to focus on the hurricane.
Absolutely. Certainly a sign of our times that there's a massacre in Texas, the death toll rising to 7, and it barely rates a mention with the President of the United States. Sarah Westwood, good to have you across all of that from Washington. Thanks so much. I want to go back to our top story now, and time is running out for people in the United States, state of Florida, to prepare for this hurricane. Right now, Dorian is not forecast to make landfall on the eastern U.S. coast, but tropical storm force winds a possible Monday. Landfall is not, of course, out of the question. Well, CNN's Nick Valencia is in Melbourne, Florida, which is facing mandatory evacuation orders. But first, I want to bring in Leila Santiago in Charleston, South Carolina, which has declared a state of emergency. Leila, the Carolinas expected to cop it. How are things going there?
Well, you know, they actually activated this morning the Emergency Operations Center here in Charleston. They also have a citizens hotline for anyone that has questions. But let me show you what you'll see if you just take a quick walk down Calhoun Street here in Charleston. This hotel actually already has flood panels ready to go, preparations that you are now actually seeing before Dorian makes its way towards the coast. And, you know, one of the things a lot of folks here talk about when you say, are you ready? They will, a lot of them talk about Irma, because Irma came in here, did a little bit of damage, a lot of damage actually, and they still remember that. Remember, this can be a very low-lying area here in Charleston. So something like this, something to handle the floods, is what you're seeing right now. We also know that folks have been in some of the stores getting water, getting their non-perishable goods, but really the attitude has been folks know that there is enough time for things to change, and they also still have a little bit of time to prepare, which is why I think we're starting to see what we're seeing. The mayor put out a statement yesterday indicating that very thing, that yes, things may change, but let's not wait till it's too late to make sure that we're ready, because flooding is a major concern for the city of Charleston. Linda.
It certainly is, and change is a good point you're making there, Leila. Just stand by for us. I want to go to Nick. Because obviously we keep hearing that the direction of this hurricane has changed. Will Florida be hit? Won't it be hit? How are people preparing there?
Just a tremendous amount of uncertainty here, and I want to show you the beach here. There's hazardous conditions, red flag warnings in effect, Linda. In fact, just a short time ago, the lifeguards blew the whistle to try to get people out of the water. In the last 5 days since we've been on the coast here, we probably have seen, this is the most people that we've seen on the beach. A lot of them have come out to see these conditions, including Mike Jaffe and his wife Kim and their kids. Hey guys, how are you?
Hello, how's it going?
Good, good. So how has this impacted you? What kind of precautions are you guys taking?
Precautions we've taken, bought a generator this year for the first time, and got about 30 gallons of extra fuel, and shuttered my mother-in-law's house and my parents' home.
So there's just been so much uncertainty. You said you guys actually had to cancel your little boy's birthday party, right? You had relatives coming in or something?
Yeah, we're supposed to have family come in from Georgia, and the storm originally was coming Saturday, then Sunday, now Monday or Tuesday, so it's definitely delayed.
With the change of the track, you know, how has that impacted, like, what you guys have done the last couple of days? Like, you know, what have been sort of the things that the steps that you've taken?
Well, you know, I work for a large general contractor in town called DFI. We employ about 130 employees, and, you know, we built a 4-story hotel in Titusville that has a wood frame structure that was in the midst of construction that didn't have any tie down, and so we worked all week getting that ready just in case sheer wind came in and would knock it over. But all our job sites have been put on a hard hold now for probably at least a week.
Mike, you said you wouldn't normally be out here on the beach right now, right? But you guys came to check out the conditions. What do you see out there? You're a lifelong resident here.
Yeah, man, there's a big cause for concern. I mean, I've been around for a Cat 2 and Cat 3 hurricanes, but nothing like a Category 5. I mean, you know.
Yeah, well, we appreciate you guys. Stay safe. Happy early birthday, brother. Appreciate it. A little shy here, but maybe it's we could chalk it up to the nerves, Linda. It's you know, this impending storm coming this way. The National Hurricane Center says yes, this is tracking off the coast, eastern coast of Florida, but they want to remind residents that they're in its path, that can change at any point, and there's still a scenario where this could make a direct landfall on Florida. That's not likely at this point, but people want to, authorities here want people to keep their guards up. Linda?
Nick Valencia, good to have you there. Good to hear from those locals as well. Thanks so much for that. Leila Santiago, thanks to you also in the Carolinas. Good to have you both. Well, still ahead on Connect the World, a house divided, new tensions flare in Britain's Brexit battle. Find out what the Prime Minister has been saying and which top official has stunned political observers. Plus, protesters in Hong Kong disrupt a train station, causing flight cancellations and delays at one of the world's busiest airports.
Stateless, persecuted. Rohingya Muslims who fled Myanmar now face a new threat. Women and children falling prey to traffickers. CNN travels to the world's largest refugee camp to understand the crisis.
Nobody was really able to do anything to help.
What does it take to lead a search for a missing child?
In 24 hours. Yeah, we're going to come back here with the police if she's not providing us with the address of the man who took the boy.
Stolen Son, a CNN Freedom Project documentary. Tonight.
On the next Africa Looks East, I'm in South Africa.
And I'm in Japan to show you why business leaders here are investing in Africa.
From driving new opportunities forward,
the transfer of skills from Japanese to Kenya, the importance of that is immense.
To digging into the future and connecting the continent to the world. These are the ways Japan is partnering with Africa.
Africa Looks East, Tuesday on CNN.
European Airlines at a crossroads on the next CNN Business Traveler.
Do you get frustrated? I wouldn't do this job if I get frustrated easily.
These CEOs are looking to what's next.
We are heavily engaged with what electric planes can do.
A glimpse into the future of travel.
Hello.
On the ground and in the air. The traveler's experience is getting a refresh on the next CNN Business Traveler.
The journey to the top for a successful business in Africa starts with an idea. But how does a concept become a moneymaker? African and global industry leaders share their stories. Saturday on Profit Point in CNN Marketplace Africa in association with Dangote.
Today, The Atlantic's editor-in-chief Jeffrey Goldberg and his big interview with former Defense Secretary James Mattis.
The country wants to hear from him about Trump, and he's going to mostly withhold. So how did you handle that in your interviews?
Reliable sources. Today.
Welcome back. Well, to Hong Kong now, where riot police have dispersed protesters from one of the main train stations leading to the city's international airport. Protesters vandalized the station and service was stopped, but the airport says aside from a few flight cancellations and delays, its operations are largely normal. Will Ripley explains why the protesters targeted that station.
Right now, riot police have just moved out of this area, and you can hear the crowds shouting at them, cheering as they go. This has been a really extraordinary scene out here because protesters were determined to stage some sort of a disruptive event at the Hong Kong airport, but they weren't able to get inside the airport. Let's get over here. Because security around the airport is only allowing in passengers and flight crew. So what the protesters did instead was they caused disruption around the airport. They set up barricades, set them on fire. The streets were gridlocked. The bridge to the airport completely impassable for hours. People had to get out of their cars and walk. People with their suitcases and luggage had to walk sometimes more than an hour just to make their flight. And now the riot police who came here to this station had really nothing to do because all of the protesters who came into the MTR vandalized, spray painted, set off the sprinkler system. They all left before the police even arrived. So now officers are leaving after we didn't see them make any arrests here, as far as we could tell. And they move on to the next location where the next group of protesters might pop up. And police don't really know what the protesters are going to do next. That's been the whole point of this protest movement. Move quickly, mess things up, and get out before the police arrive. They feel that this is a sustainable model to make their point. 13th consecutive weekend of protests here in Hong Kong, and even though the crowds are smaller, the protesters are more aggressive, and this shows no sign of dying down. Will Ripley, CNN, Hong Kong.
Our thanks to Will for that report. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right here. Stay with us.
It's like a storm that cuts a path. It breaks your will. It feels like that. You think you're lost, but you're not lost.
As this magnificent species edges closer to extinction, illegal hunting continues to rise. Are you ready to let her go? For a gift of $8 a month, you can symbolically adopt a snow leopard and help protect them and other endangered species and their habitats. Call now or go online to helpwwf.org and receive this adoption kit as thanks. Will you stand by her? Please, help us stop the killing today.
Vi que tenían a mi amigo amarrado de sus manos y de sus pies y con una venda en su cara. Es que ahora lo vas a matar, me dijo.
Ya me dijo que ya no me iban a dejar salir. Me llevaron y pues me empezaron a vender con hombres.
You've heard it in the news. It's happening right now. Thousands are fleeing gang violence in and around Central America. Millions more are leaving Venezuela to escape violence, insecurity, and threats. These refugee children desperately need your help today. With your gift to USA for UNHCR, you can help provide urgently needed food, clean water, and safety to children and families who are fleeing for their lives. Go to forcedtoflee.org and donate just $19 a month right now. Help bring peace and safety to these innocent children today. Go online with your $19 monthly support now.
Welcome back. There are now just 60 days until Brexit, and as the clock ticks down, major questions are becoming more urgent. The biggest, will Britain leave with a deal? Prime Minister Boris Johnson has not answered that yet, but he told the Sunday Times, quote, people campaigning against no deal are making it more likely. Haddis Gold explains what he meant.
The battle lines on Brexit are hardening ahead of what will be a pivotal week in the UK Parliament. In his first newspaper interview after suspending Parliament for longer than normal, Prime Minister Boris Johnson told the Sunday Times that an effort by opposition parties to pass a bill in Parliament to stop a no deal is actually making it more likely. Johnson questioned what the legislation would actually achieve, considering it would likely force another extension to the UK leaving the EU, something they've already done twice. And then in an interview with BBC that stunned political observers here, Michael Gove, one of Johnson's senior cabinet ministers, actually declined to confirm that they would even abide by a bill blocking no deal if it were to pass.
If this legislation goes through Parliament, both houses of Parliament, does the government abide by it?
Let's see what the legislation says.
But surely the answer has to be yes, it's the law.
Let's see what the legislation says. You're asking me about a pig in a poke, and I will wait to see what legislation the opposition may try to bring forward. But we know what their intention is.
We're in constitutional times, but for a government to say we won't abide by legislation is impossible, surely.
We will see what the legislation says when it is put forward. For me, the most important thing is to bear in mind, actually, we already have legislation in place, which an overwhelming majority of MPs voted for. We already have an EU Withdrawal Act. We already have the notice on Article 50, the process by which we leave the European Union. The overwhelming majority of MPs voted to do that.
I understand that's all. That
what Keir Starmer is trying to do now is to say, you know, British people, I said that we would leave. I said in my manifesto that we would leave. But now I actually think we won't leave.
Meanwhile, on the other side of Brexit, we of course have the European Union watching all of this drama unfold. And in an op-ed for the Sunday Telegraph, the EU's chief Brexit negotiator, Michel Barnier, wrote that he is not optimistic about avoiding a no-deal Brexit, and that they are rejecting the UK's demands to scrap the Irish backstop. That is the condition that prevents a hard border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. And of course, beyond the fireworks in Parliament this week, the government's decision to suspend Parliament will also be tested in court, where several cases seeking an injunction are expected to start. Hadas Gold, CNN, London.
I'm Lynda Kinkade. That was Connect the World. Thanks for joining us. Every 30 minutes throughout the day, we will bring you the latest on the Category 5 hurricane, which is the strongest on the planet this year as it barrels through the Bahamas towards the United States.
Of all the ways to go, what if you go Korean? There are many ways to go, but only one way to go Korean.
An unprecedented Democratic presidential town hall event. Climate crisis. Biden, Warren, Sanders, Harris, Buttigieg, Klobuchar, Booker, O'Rourke, Yang, Castro. 10 candidates, 10 town halls, all on one night. Wednesday on CNN.
As our cities grow bigger, so do our demands of the planet. With new demands come new technologies and bright new ideas. From the food we eat.
What if there's a way to take a single cell and make meat for the world?
To the air we breathe and the water we drink. See the breakthrough ideas using innovation to transform these life necessities. Innovative Cities, Saturday on CNN.
Excuse me, miss, you dropped this.
Oh, it's just a penny.
Just a penny? Just a penny? It all begins with the humble penny. Whether writing your first check or cashing big checks. To those at the top, making their mark, closing deals round the clock. On Quest Means Business, we know every penny has power. And it's not how many you have, It's what you do with them that counts. That's the marvel of money. Quest means business. What a profitable hour!
All new African Voices Changemakers. Create opportunities. Impact communities. Transform lives. This week, highlighting some of the biggest changemakers on the continent.
For me, really, the exciting moment is when the child gets the limb of interest and then they're thinking of what they can do. It's priceless.
African Voices Changemakers, tonight on CNN. Next week, Amanpour is live with a newsmaker lineup. Former U.S. Defense Secretary Jim Mattis, Brazilian Foreign Minister Ernesto Araújo, and Democratic 2020 candidates Beto O'Rourke and Cory Booker. Amanpour, next week on CNN.
Business never sleeps. As the sun sets in Seoul and Shanghai, deals are signed in Dubai, and Europe is already in play. New York prepares to make its first move. I'm Julia Chatterley, journalist, global market analyst, and host of CNN's newest business show, First Move. Join me in the financial capital of the world for a market-moving perspective on the news influencing global politics, culture, and finance. I'll speak to newsmakers, risk takers, and the ultimate game changers.
Bold moves, big deals, winning trades. It's all right here. Make CNN your first move.
First Move with Julia Chatterley. Weekdays on CNN.
I'm Paula Newton in Caracas, and this is CNN.
Hello, I'm Lynda Kinkade, and this is CNN News Now. The strongest storm of the year is beginning to make landfall in the northern Bahamas. Hurricane Dorian is forecast to pound the islands with extreme wind, torrential rain, and deadly storm surges. The hurricane is moving slowly. It's expected to turn over the Bahamas throughout Sunday before heading towards the United States' southeast coast. Hong Kong International Airport is indicating its operations are largely normal, although a few flights have been cancelled, others delayed. Riot police were clearing protesters who had to block transport routes to the airport. A major train station remains closed. Bus service is gradually resuming as well. President Trump has condemned the gun rampage that killed 7 people in Texas while praising law enforcement for its response. The gunman began the attack when he fired at troopers who had stopped him in his car. He then drove off and continued shooting, hijacking